My name is Chris Leisman, and this other person is.
I'm Josh. Hi.
And we are doing a podcast about random topics. We essentially read the news and use the news as jumping off points for further deep conversations, sometimes about science and sometimes about penises. So, Josh, do you want to you want to briefly mention what we talk about on our first episode?
Oh, let's see. What did we cover in the first episode? We covered a little bit about vaccines. It's been in the news a lot
For
recently.
some reason.
For some reason, yeah. A couple political topics. I think we get into some movies, some music, general ramblings, etc., etc.
Yeah, General Ramblings is more or less what this podcast should be called, but we don't have a name for it yet.
Maybe we do
Maybe
now.
we do now. But yeah, and I do feel like I need to note at the beginning here that the audio quality of this intro is not the same as the audio quality of the actual podcast. Yeah, I know it's annoying. We're doing the thing that I'm trying to not do with our podcast right now, where we're recording over Skype, which is the thing that annoys me so bad. But that's out of necessity. I left my microphone stuff at your house, so
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
So basically, yeah, that's our podcast. It's just a tangent-filled podcast. This episode is what you said about politics and some other stuff, and we talk about music a little bit. And the general themes are like I don't know. We feel my general talking points on this episode are about how in my opinion, a lot of things aren't as far as like creating art and media. It's not as well thought out, and people tend to rely heavily on repetition and not facts and not a lot of effort to create stuff. And that's more or less one of my things that I bitch about. So that's what our first episode is about. And we ended up having to split it into two parts because I started talking about movies, and you made the mistake of asking me questions about movies. So the second part is just like a bullshit tangent cast about movies and the movie Cyborg, and we talk
I
about M. Night
forgot about that.
Shyamalan. It's a bad movie. It's definitely worth watching. So I guess that's all I had to say. Do you have
Yep.
anything you need to add?
I don't think so.
All right.
All right.
Well, part one, and then the next episode will be part two. So I hope that whoever you are, you enjoy it.
Yeah. Whee! Enjoy.
Well, we're recording.
Oh God.
We're doing it. We're doing it right now.
God.
Sit a little closer
Right
to me.
now.
Sit
I don't wanna.
Get a little
No.
bit closer. Point your face at that microphone. Oh, saxophone. Yeah, okay. So do you want to just say what you just said?
Sure. So we're doing stupid bullshit.
This is the Stupid Bullshit Podcast.
No, I don't know. We're two guys from Southern Indiana talking about random crap.
That's more or less it. I guess we're just going to figure this out as we do it.
Yep. First episode.
First episode.
We get a freebie.
Yeah, the first one's always shitty, and this is going to be shitty. So
Bear with us.
I don't know if it's going to be fun for anyone else. But I mean, podcasts are more for yourself, right?
Are they?
I don't know.
All right.
It's art for art's sake, I guess.
I like talking sometimes.
I don't know where to start. I kind of figured we'd just start talking about news and see what the fuck happens.
Cool. I like it.
All right. Well, recently in the news, it's been awful.
This fact alone is not news.
But I mean, it's not quite so much in the news cycle right now. It hasn't been for the past couple of days. But for some reason, we're talking about vaccines again in the news, and I don't understand why. It's like every time this comes up, I'm always like, can't we just play the footage from the news last time? Do we need to interview new people on whether or not vaccines work? Can we just not just show the footage of well, 2 months ago we were having a debate on whether or not vaccines work, and then we brought in every scientist in the world, and every scientist in the world said yes. And then everybody went home. We're done.
I don't know. This is something I haven't really kept up with a lot. I know I've seen it mentioned on the news. What are the arguments that people are making? Because weren't some of the arguments before were like, these vaccines aren't tested, we don't know what could happen.
It's basically, I find a lot of the people that don't trust vaccines are the same people that don't trust the government, which I'm not saying you should trust the government exactly, but it's more about like people. It's like at first it sounds like right. Wow, that was a really loud sound. It sounds. It's like at first their argument starts to make sense where they're like, well, you need to do the research yourself, and they're right, but the way they do the research is they Google like why vaccines are bad. So then they find articles on why vaccines are bad, and they're not written by scientists, and they're not vetted in any community, and they don't actually have any evidence to support it at all. And then part of the other argument is companies that make vaccines make money. That's usually something they bring up a lot. Like, oh, well, they're making money. And it's like, we know, and it's like it's just that all of the arguments don't make any sense, and some people still bring up the autism thing, which a lot of people have started to separate themselves from the autism thing.
I have heard that.
Yeah, but they're kind of more going back to this, like, we should be able to make the choice because we're the parents, and we should be able to review the information ourselves and make an informed decision. But the problem is, no, they're not making an informed decision at all. They're making unreasonable doubts. They're not looking at the evidence and then coming away with a conclusion. They're going in with a bias of don't trust the government, or not trusting the medical field in general, which a lot of people don't. Everybody hates going to the doctor usually. Yeah. And I think that just stems from all that stuff. And they're afraid. I think it's usually the same type of parent that is overprotective, and they're afraid that they're trying to do everything they can to make their kid better. And overprotective parents tend to make weird, insane decisions like this. So it's something I don't understand, really. It's like we were talking the other day about how there's another news story recently where people were arguing it's a First Amendment right to have a religious exemption from medical procedures that could save their children. They're concerned about their faith and their child's faith, so they're willing to not get medical attention for something that needs medical attention, or their child will die. So they're not making. I mean, it's a different argument because it comes from a religious argument, but right. I think this type of thinking is similar to religious thinking in a sense. It's not a scientific argument, even though these people try to veil it in that, because they're disregarding every scientist. They're disregarding every scientific study. I think it's just concerned parents, and I think that's basically all it is just like this whole concerned parent thing that we have nowadays. That was really long rant.
It was. That was good though. Do you feel better?
A little bit. Not entirely sure it made sense.
No, I thought it did. I mean, I would definitely agree with the majority of that. Something else that just, I don't know, that I thought of when you mentioned the whole parents rejecting it for their kids, rejecting, healthcare and procedures based on some sort of religious basis. I think I could understand that quite a bit more if maybe they were rejecting treatment for themselves based on a religious basis. But when it's for your small child who doesn't have the capacity to make that decision,
right? I
think that's I have a hard time with that personally.
See, this is the thing, though. It's like I consider myself libertarian, and I listen to lots of podcasts, and I listen to lots of political talk from other people who are libertarian, and we're all on the same side, which is we're on the opposite side we're always on, which is, in this case, you kind of like trusting the government and trusting the establishment is the right choice. I think maybe, even though in every other situation, I think that people should be able to make the choice and the government shouldn't push it on you. But in this case, for vaccines and for medical treatment that could, if you abstain from it, it could kill someone. I think that if you're making that choice for somebody else, I mean, I don't think that as a parent you should be able to do that. It's tough because in pretty much every other case, I think that should be the way it is. But in this case, When people are making a choice that's this wrong and it's based on no evidence and people are dying, and in this case with vaccines, it's not just denying medical treatment for your own kids to die. You're infecting other people with diseases.
That is a possibility.
Absolutely. So it damages the whole populace. So you're making a bad choice for everyone. And in that case, I can understand the argument 100% that it should be regulated by the government and people shouldn't have a choice. I 100% understand that argument.
I hate needles.
Maybe that's just their secret argument against vaccines is I hate needles. I did have one last thing on vaccines is I listened to Bill Maher's show for some reason, the podcast version. And people have called him a vaccine denier, and he maintains that he isn't. He just thinks that the flu vaccine is bullshit. I'm using finger quotes, bullshit. But if you research how flu vaccines are cooked up and distributed, you would understand that his argument is bullshit and stupid because, I mean, well, his whole thing about vaccines, I mean, he basically boiled it down mostly to the flu vaccine, where he says it's ineffective. And his whole argument against it is it only works 25% of the time, so it doesn't work, which is an insane statement to make, number one, because if it works 1/4 of the time, then it works 1/4 of the time. It does not work 0% of the time. That's number one. Number two, there are different strains of the flu. And every year, people are infected with different strains, and we don't know which strain is going to hit us until it happens. And the amount of flu vaccine that we have to make to try to counteract that for an entire country they basically have to make a shot in the dark and make an educated guess. It's not a shot in the dark exactly, but it's an educated guess. Which vaccines to supply us with and which ones to distribute before the flu actually happens. So, we might be, the 75% of the country could be infected with one type of flu that they guessed wrong on. So then the other 25%, the other, whatever versions of the flu that we did prepare well, that's the 25% that does have, it does work for them. And I think that's part of a lot of it, stuff like this, because it's a slightly more complicated issue. People don't, I mean, it's like something that happens. It's like a conversational thing when people are complaining about flu vaccines. It doesn't work, and then somebody says they don't work, and then it just gets repeated, and I just hit the fucking microphone stand. So I think that's the whole thing against vaccines and basically any argument like this where there's no scientific basis to support a claim. I think it's just like with the autism thing, the whole way back the beginning of the anti-vaccine movement, that was one guy publishing a paper who it turned out later he was in the pocket of somebody in some manner and basically just made up a scientific article. I mean, it wasn't fully made up, but it was basically, the argument was there are more kids getting vaccines now and autism is diagnosed more often now. That was the entire crux of the paper. It was just that. That's it.
There were no direct links.
There's no direct link.
Evidential links.
Absolutely none. There was none in it at all. That was his whole argument. And this whole anti-vaccine movement there might have been a little bit of it before, and there was, but it really came in full swing, and it became, Jenny McCarthy on like fucking Oprah talking about how vaccines made her kid have autism and all this other shit. So I think even though people want to distance themselves from that part of the argument, that part about not trusting the vaccine is still in the back of your mind. And I think that happens for a lot of arguments like that.
All right.
Do you think we killed that one?
I think we killed it.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's something that I have seen in the news, but it's something that I haven't really kept up on. So I don't have a ton of comment on it, but it does seem to be a repeated argument with very, very little, if any, basis.
Yeah.
That seems clear enough.
I think so. Now, that one was a little bit more research from me, but I think I'd like to jump off into something that neither of us knows anything about.
Cool.
But we talk about all the time.
I like it.
Speaking of things that people repeat and using one example, whether or not it is a good example, as an example of something not working, why the fuck are we not running off of all nuclear energy? And why are we, I talk to people about it all the time, and they always say Chernobyl, and now they say Fukushima, but they don't say Fukushima. They say Fukushima or whatever. Whatever the fuck people say around here. I think how my dad pronounces Fukushima. Fukushima Daiichi. I don't know. That's not how my dad sounds at all. That's not even close. Fukushima.
I think that's part of it is certainly that I think people get so scared of it because they look and see the very, very few instances where something really went wrong.
Right.
And they see how badly it went wrong.
Right.
So I can understand some of the hesitation and the fear there, but it seems to me that a lot of the people making those arguments don't really understand the level of human error that went into that.
Exactly. That's my whole point too. And it's very similar to me, the way that we look at terrorism, and it's a little bit different now because of like ISIS and ISIL and all that shit happening. But it's like before, even after 9/11, I mean even now I can't remember what the actual statistic. Somebody fucking put this in some news article, and so people have been quoting it, and it's probably misquoted. But somebody said like you're like 10 times more likely to be struck by lightning than be killed by a terrorist or something like that. It's it doesn't have to be accurate in order for you to understand the goal of saying something like that.
Right,
It's
right.
unbelievably unlikely that it would happen, but it's possible. But like we've had really only 2 nuclear meltdowns like this, and Chernobyl was basically unbelievable human error.
Yeah.
People not doing maintenance, people lying about maintenance. It was 100% that, and then Fukushima was, I believe in some instances it was similar, where it was like some of the safety checks hadn't been done as often, and the barrier wall to keep the seawater out of it was not high enough, and they just never fixed it. I can't quite remember. There was some kind of thing where like they thought maybe some of I don't know. It was some kind of cover up. I can't even remember it anymore. Probably should have like fucking actually looked this up. But I said this is going to be talking out of our asses, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I didn't research anything before this discussion, so
There is a documentary. I think it's still on Netflix about the Fukushima Daiichi disaster. I think it's called 311. If that's not right, there's a book called 311 that's basically news reports about it, and it says all the same stuff in it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean.
The documentary is called Pray for Japan.
Oh, there we go. Go watch it.
Go watch it.
Yeah, Fukushima, I haven't heard. I remember hearing a ton about it when it first happened.
And we do have to admit that like the barrier walls not being high enough is a big problem. And definitely with that one, it was an act of God. It was a natural disaster.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, whereas Chernobyl was just people not
Pure human error.
Pure human error.
Yeah, totally preventable. And it really kind of depresses me how many people don't understand that, and they think that disaster was just caused by nuclear power and it was unpreventable.
Right.
And that's just not true. If you want to make the case that, okay, if we have a system that is this quote unquote dangerous and a little human error can cause this kind of disaster, I can understand that argument as well. But with as fast as technology is proceeding and getting better with regards to safety checks,
right,
and automated, help me out here, fallback systems.
Yeah, automatic fallback systems. And the Chinese have come up with new ways to use nuclear energy as well, or their nuclear plants. I mean, I am a bit of a critic of China after knowing Steve, because Steve's lived there for several years. But their public works program is partially, well, not, it's 100% funded by the government, but it's partially to artificially inflate their economy, and a lot of their public works projects are very shoddily built. But I would hope at least that their new technology, building nuclear energy and everything, would be, like this. I mean, China might be our case. If China can make it work, then maybe that will influence America to make it work. But if China fucks it up and their nuclear plants start to leak, like kind of like how their roads just collapse sometimes, then. I don't know. I'm not going to hate on China all that much, but I don't know. It's something to think about. But I think it's another thing it's important to note that, I mean, people in America, when we think about energy, we always think of coal, and nuclear energy is cleaner than coal. I mean, it doesn't sound like it is, because when you think nuclear energy, I think people just think destruction. They think about the atom bomb And Japan is very. I mean, there's a large amount of the Japanese population that's anti-nuclear, even though most of their electricity, I believe, still most of their electricity comes from nuclear power. So I don't think people fully grasp the brevity of how much we actually do rely on nuclear power, and how clean it is, and how well it could work. And a lot of nuclear power plants they just let them go. They let them go and they shut them down, and they try to replace them with coal plants, and there's just the amount of power a nuclear plant can put out versus a coal plant is
not even close.
It's not even close.
All right.
Yeah.
We got vaccines.
We got that.
And nuclear power.
And then the last thing about how people deal with things of that nature, where people kind of repeat things over and over, I have just health in the news. Because it comes up a lot. And, with vaccines, I feel like people can, when people hear things enough times, it really sinks in. It really does. And you can definitely look at this, like if you do like a study, people have done case studies on Fox News about how many times they repeat a lie, and it seems true. I mean, even if they issue a retraction for it, there's footage of them saying it 5 times in one day, and then other news stories are going to pick it up, even though a lot of the other news stations are critical of Fox News. They're going to pick up their story, and they're going to run with it anyway. And they're going to say, stuff like whenever, like Benghazi, like that was all over the news. People say Benghazi all the time. And then everything is something gate now, like with the fucking football thing, with the Deflate gate.
Deflate gate.
Yes. And people just repeat all these buzzwords over and over again. So I just feel like we need to have more adult conversations about this kind of stuff, because when somebody, it's just like John Oliver's show was so fucking perfect whenever he was talking about global warming. Like, have you seen this? I think you've seen it.
I think I saw that one. Yeah.
It was like, to have the way the news presents two sides of an argument is absolutely ridiculous, because they have one guy here, and they have one guy here, and they have like an interaction that lasts 14 seconds, and some asshole screaming at you on the fucking television. And it's like when it came to the global warming thing, if you haven't seen it, you should look it up on YouTube. But he has one guy say, "I don't believe in global warming," and then in order to accurately represent the other side of the argument, he has an entire room of guys in lab coats come in. The 97% of scientists that agree with it versus the 3% that don't. But when you have one guy on the news saying that he doesn't believe in global warming, and one guy on the other side and he does believe in global warming, that's, I think, a misrepresentation. So I think that's something that we should think about all the time, especially when we watch the news, because it's kind of unfortunate, because we can't really trust what we watch on the news anymore. Because I mean, like, you could say that everybody has a bias, but it's literally like nothing television now. You cannot get news from the news anymore. You have to watch and then go on Snopes or something, or like PolitiFact, and look everything they say up to see if it's true, because you don't know. Because
there's so much bias.
There's so much bias.
Everything now. And I think that seems to be the biggest issue.
Absolutely. And they try to fill all this fucking time, and they make stories out of non-stories. So it's anything to just keep talking, and they will eventually start making mistakes. And when it's 24 hours a day and there's a very clear bias, you're going to be making a lot of errors. To get back on topic with the health thing, like, people, there's always like a thing that's unhealthy that people freak out about. Like just recently, there was finally a scientific study that proved that people have gluten intolerance. Like, you can have gluten intolerance and not have celiac. And that's fine, and that's great that that's out in the open, and people like me will shut up about how nobody has gluten intolerance, and I can admit that I was wrong, and I hate it when people complain about it, but because I'm an asshole. But but like the public outcry for gluten intolerance, because it basically makes it like you don't feel right after you eat gluten, right?
I have an aunt that has that, and I think her daughter, my cousin, has that as well.
Right. But they spent so much time talking about this, and it became a buzzword, and then people started to sell food with has no gluten, and it became like a money making thing. It's kind of like whenever people did antioxidants for a while. Everything that had antioxidants on it had antioxidants on the box, and there's all this cereal that came out that had antioxidants in it, and then like it was acai berries, and it's the way that we look at health is like fucking marketing. We don't actually look at what is actually good for us and what we should actually be looking out for. The number one health, as far as health goes, the number one killer in America is still heart disease, and we don't I mean, people will mention it every now and again on the news, but like we should be fucking talking about this every day. And we're inundated with like all this fast food advertising all the time. And I think it's become too normal to us to sit down and eat cheese and bread and meat every meal and just eat all this shit and not exercise and then die. And I feel like that's something we should be talking about all the fucking time. Like it should be something we get ingrained in our heads when we're young, that we can't eat like that, because that's the way I ate when I was young, and I was in very bad shape. And you know, thankfully now I don't have any health concerns physically anymore. But like, you know, I really honestly didn't, when I was a kid, I did not know you can't just eat fast food every day. I mean, people would tell you about the food pyramid, but like, you know, when you try to actually go buy food at the grocery store and you make your food and you're like a kid, I mean, it's really easy, especially if you live in like a town that has plenty of fast food restaurants. It's really easy to do that. And especially like I grew up and my mom was single, and, you know, going to McDonald's and getting a whole meal for like $4 was very fucking tempting, and we often did that. But you know, and I think both of us health-wise suffered from it, because both of us were like sick all the time, and we didn't eat anything other than crap. And thankfully, you know, both of us have kind of come out of that a bit. But I don't know, it's just especially when it runs in my family a little bit. I mean, that's how my grandfather died. But I mean, it's hard to find somebody who doesn't know somebody who died of a heart attack too young, and it happens all the time. And I feel like we get way too distracted with like whatever the magic thing of the week is, instead of just nailing down these really serious, hard topics and constantly talking about it and having real adult conversations about, you know, what kind of things we can eat and how to exercise. And people talk about exercise all the time in this really vague fashion. And you know, it's because I think people always want to try to turn this into selling a product and not actually just fucking helping the public. And a lot of these shows that are supposedly trying to do that aren't doing that. They're just selling bullshit, like Dr. Oz. His fucking show, there's always some fucking snake oil salesman trying to sell some bullshit. And it just pisses me off because my mom watches it. And I have to like debrief her on all of the shit. And I'm like, it's just fucking frustrating.
There's another great episode on Dr. Oz from John Oliver last week tonight, so you should check that out too. Yes, that is a great
basically
episode.
Stop listening to this podcast and go watch
right
every
now.
clip of John Oliver's show.
Yeah. But no, not to drag us backwards, but I think this does tie in very, very well with the news thing.
I think it's 100% ties into it.
Yeah, 100%, because it goes back to kind of that bias in a sense. Someone's always trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
They're always coming at it from their angle. The news always seems to have a bias, or to be pushing one side of the argument. No one is just putting out, you know, hey, here's information, do what you want with this. These are the facts, do what you want with this information.
Because I feel like, I don't want to fucking step all over because we've been talking for like 3 hours and it's mostly just been me.
No, you have a lot to talk about. I'm tired. I had a rough day at work. I kind of just want to go to bed. But
people act like facts aren't facts now. Because I feel like it's something with our generation too. Like, people act like you can't prove anything, and that like everything is just an opinion. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People tend to treat opinions the same as facts, and they don't see a clear difference. And I think it goes straight back to the media, and it's I mean, because they're supposed to be, the fucking news is supposed to be for public good. I mean, this is America, and we are supposedly in a democratic free society where we need information. And whenever you skew that information at its very core, you create a whole population that doesn't know anything. Mm-hmm. And the only reason I know some stuff is because I really fucking go out of my way to try to find the truth about shit.
And it's sad that you have to do that.
It is, and it's fucking exhausted, and there's a reason that I'm dumb, because I have to spend all this fucking time looking at all this shit. And it's frustrating because then you talk to other people and they're still thinking about the fucking whatever, the vaccines cause autism and all that other stuff. And you're like, well, I've read like 14 fucking scientific articles using words I've never seen in my life before. And it's frustrating because you just want to be like, here's a piece of paper, read this. And, you know, people don't want to do that. They want to sit down and watch the news, and they want them to tell the fucking truth. And they don't. I didn't intend to talk for like 5 minutes or two.
No, that was good. That was powerful.
Okay.
I could feel it.
Yeah, but I mean, back to the food thing. I feel like, I mean, it ebbs and flows, and it depends on what network you watch. And I feel like local news is actually usually a little bit better. But it's just like, I know that beer tastes good and bacon tastes good, but do we really need to make everything beer battered and wrapped in bacon?
Very fair point.
It's just, I don't know. And it's so fucking frustrating to see all these fucking beer commercials and all this shit. And it's just like, just fucking.
And at the end of the day, it's people's choice.
It is people's
to do whatever they want to do.
But I feel like people don't make informed decisions. And I feel that, I mean, I 100% fall into that. Everybody falls into it.
Yeah.
Even if you try really hard not to do it, you're going to do it because you can't know everything.
Right.
You have to be able to rely on other people's, experience and knowledge at some point. And at some point, they're going to be lying to you. So
that is how it appears.
Yeah.
At least. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can stop drinking so much, eating so goddamn much, and stop freaking the fuck out about stupid shit that isn't actually going to hurt us, and realize that what we do habitually is the shit that we fear the most, not the other way around.
Yeah. What he said.
Yeah. So instead of worrying about terrorism and nuclear war and nuclear power.
I mean, you can worry about that if you want.
You can worry about that. I mean, I worry about
That's
that
fair.
sometimes. I mean, North Korea. But
Yep.
instead of worrying about the big things
Terminator.
happening, instead of worrying about Skynet, you could worry about, whether or not you've gotten 30 minutes of exercise and whether or not you've had too many beers and whether or not you've eaten a cheeseburger too many times. And that's really that should be the thing that you worry about and not the crazy stuff.
I agree.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Moving on.
Woo.
I wanted to talk about politics briefly. Like I said, I consider myself libertarian. That became one word. I consider myself libertarian, but I'm not like a registered libertarian. I consider myself more of an independent. Libertarianism is the closest thing it ties into. When other libertarians talk, I tend to disagree with them for the most part. I just feel like anytime you try to get a group and they all have a clear identity, it usually just doesn't match up with whatever the thing is that I feel like whenever people get into political parties and groups, they tend to try to make everything match up in a way that doesn't match to me. And I don't know. I just, the whole concept of political parties to me is kind of foreign. And I look at it more as like, I don't know, like if I identify myself as a libertarian, you can more or less guess how I would vote and how I would look on a topic, more or less.
I do agree that I think the whole the party categorization does quite a bit of harm in the sense that when you find out that someone is a libertarian or a Democrat or a Republican, you immediately does that give you an idea, very broad general idea of where they stand on certain topics? Yes, absolutely. But
usually,
right. But it could give you a ton of misconceptions about what they believe, and I feel like a lot of people look at those party categorizations and they just group all of these people in as believing the same things on this topic or something along those lines, and they don't really take the time to consider or look into where a person or a candidate or what have you, where these people actually stand on issues.
Mm-hmm. And I think also the other side of that is people kind of self-identify as something and it becomes part of their identity and they kind of tribalize themselves. So even if they don't actually believe whatever their candidates say, if you're a Republican and your candidates are talking about how global warming isn't real, you could be a Republican and have no opinion on global warming and then be swayed because you believe with them on the other topics. Mm-hmm. So you assume that they know more than you and you assume that, global warming isn't real or whatever. And I feel like I think that's a lot of people fall into that. And I feel like, especially people that listen to whatever skewed political talk radio you hear, you tend to, if you identify that whatever that is, you start to kind of copy and paste all their opinions. Essentially. Yeah. I feel like, my family does it, but yeah. I wanted to dip into, number one, I think it's stupid that we always talk about the presidential election like a week after we have an election.
That is true.
I remember voting for Obama kind of begrudgingly because I feel, again, I'm more of a libertarian, but I can't even remember I've never voted for a presidential libertarian candidate because usually They will say something insane, and I will hate them. Like, I was following Rand Paul vaguely, and recently, like on this vaccine thing, he came out, like, well, he's a fucking doctor, by the way. I want to bring that up. He's not like a doctor of fucking African art or fucking, he does wood block prints. He's a fucking doctor, like a medical doctor. And he was like, well, I've heard stories that vaccines can cause defects in children. No, you haven't. You've heard one fucking guy say a thing in a paper and then everybody repeated it to you. And it's the same thing that happened to anybody else. Even somebody who is a doctor believed a fake bullshit report that people repeated enough times. So I stopped supporting Rand Paul for that reason, and I have no candidate right now, and I have no idea who I'm going to vote for. And I felt like that for the last election too. The only reason I really voted for Obama last time is because I really fucking did not want Mitt Romney to be president.
and that is somewhat fair.
And that pissed me off. I always thought, I'm never going to vote like that, and I fucking did it.
Well, I'm prepared for a browbeating on this. My policy on this, first of all, I generally just loathe politics. Yeah. I hate talking about it. We won't get into that, but basically my policy on voting is I will vote when I see someone worth voting for. And I am 26 years old and I have not seen that yet. So I have not voted. Yeah. And I know many people will probably say, I'm doing a disservice to democracy and to my country for not doing so, but that's how I look at it.
See, I used to look at it that way, and I started to think about, because I feel like I didn't want to vote for somebody who I didn't agree with a lot of stuff on because I would feel responsible for whatever policy decisions they made that I didn't like. Like, I am a hardcore fucking anti-war person. I understand that war is going to exist and it's going to perpetuate. I don't want any part of it. I hate it. The idea of me giving my taxes to the government and they bomb a fucking hospital, even if it's not by accident. If it happens one fucking time, it's the worst thing. It's the worst thing ever, and I feel like shit. I can't. We are so fucking lucky to be so far away from stuff like that, and I can't fathom the amount of pain and suffering that every country that's ever in war has caused anyone. I can't fucking deal with it. It's too much. I feel like human life's too precious, and I fucking hate war, and I supported Obama, but I feel like Obama, and people fucking laugh when I say this, especially my dad. I feel like Obama, number one, if you actually look at his policies, he's not that liberal. He's liberal on like gay marriage and some social programs.
Social, yeah.
But he's pretty hardcore about war and stuff. He's gradually been pulling back the troops and stuff, but as far as the amount of bombs that he's dropped under his the amount of bombs and fucking Hellfire missiles and shit under his presidency, the drone strikes, the attacks on people that are not all that clearly enemy combatants is pretty fucking high, and that's something I cannot abide by. I think Obama has overall been a pretty good president, but when it comes down to it, I can't support war. I just can't do it. I can understand small scale tactical attacks on small groups of enemy combatants when there's like no fucking choice, or there's no chance that a bystander is going to be hurt. And even then, you understand that these people are people and they have families and they have lives and they deserve to live like anybody else. But when you're talking about groups like ISIL and these terrorist organizations and that fucking the group in Africa, Boko Haram. Yeah. Boko Haram. I want every fucking member of Boko Haram to be burned alive and their ashes shoved up their own asses. I don't know how that's possible. I don't think that is possible. There's no way how that would work. No. There's no way how that would work. Okay. But just like metaphorically in my mind, the emotional reaction to hearing the things they do is I somehow want them to burn to death and also be up their own asses. I don't know why I feel that way in my heart.
That is oddly specific.
It is oddly specific. I want them to not exist. I want them to stop their, killing and raping children. And that's whenever you talk about stuff like that and you're like, we got to go to war for that stuff. I get it. I fucking get it. I want these people to be gone off the face of the planet. But it's that's war isn't that clean. It's just not that clean. And especially this war has not been that clean. And like I said, bombing hospitals and civilian locations and stuff. And even if it's a mistake and even if it only happens once, it's still, you're ending lives and there's no way to get them back.
Yeah.
I can't abide by that.
And I think part of what makes it so difficult is when you are dealing with groups like ISIL and ISIS and, Al-Qaeda, groups that will, put groups of fighters in hospitals and in schools because they know that we will have to bomb that hospital or that school to get to them. I think that's a tough question. How do you deal with an enemy that is capable of doing that and that has that just total lack of regard for human life?
Fucking call Superman. I fully support the fucking Captain America Super Soldier program. I really feel like, though, like I was hoping, the drones thing is a thing that seemed like it was a good idea at first, getting our own soldiers off the battlefield and taking out enemy combatants, but it's just not precise enough for me. Bombs are too dirty. Small tactical teams for something like that, I think, would probably work better, but I don't know. I feel like anytime we get into something like this, it's just because that by dropping a bomb on that, like if you got a bunch of terrorists and there's a bunch of civilians, you can drop a bomb on that and you can kill all those terrorists, but then you kill all those civilians. But if you send soldiers in, you run the risk of killing your own citizens. Yeah. So I mean, that's usually our country just drops the bomb, but I feel like, that fucking doesn't make me feel good. Neither option makes me feel good.
It's a choice between two bowls of shit.
It really sucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to choose a commander-in-chief is, for me, very complicated, and for you, very complicated. And neither of us gets excited about the political rush, the race for presidency, because we always think it's going to be shitty.
Yep.
And I find it absolutely fucking heartbreaking that we're talking about Jeb Bush.
This is news to me. Chris actually mentioned this last night. And
it's been all over the news.
I actually, okay, true story. I got rid of my cable package like months ago, 6-8 months ago.
Yeah.
And I got rid of all but like a couple local news stations. And so I just pretty much haven't watched the news.
Yeah.
And a lot of it just goes back to what we were talking about before, how the news is just depressing and terrible. And it really is.
Yeah, it is.
And so I don't know. I realize that I'm ignorant on a lot of subjects, and I do need to do better about doing my own research on some of these hot button issues.
Well, the deal is Jeb Bush has been tapped to run for president, or he's been talking about it, however the fuck that works. And he is George Bush's younger brother, and I don't understand why, if somebody has Bush in their name, we have to elect them.
That seems to be a trend.
Yeah, he's the former governor of Florida. And I think the only reason that he was running is, Clinton's running again. I feel like people just want that sense of familiarity. Like people like the idea of, political families and like this kind of...
There's almost a sense of nostalgia to it.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of almost harkening back to almost like royalty or, like, because like these big rich families and they have famous last names and we know who their parents are. There's a sense of familiarity with like electing these people, and it's something that I don't understand at all. I feel like whenever you see, for the amount of human beings that live in our country, and you see the same people over and over again coming up for president, it seems insane to me. I feel like there's got to be people who are not in this horrible bullshit system that's not just fucking lobbyists and millionaires. There's got to be somebody who can actually fucking do this job and make better decisions than what we're doing. And it's even tougher now that we realize, when you get older, you realize the president doesn't make every decision. And this is definitely apparent with the Obama administration and all of the problems that they have and how nobody trusts anybody, nobody talks to anybody anymore. I find it incredibly disheartening that we're talking about fucking Jeb Bush. I don't understand it. If you Google Jeb Bush, by the way, you will find right now, I think the top hit is Jeb Bush too liberal to run for Republican nomination? I always find this fascinating to read whenever the GOP declares somebody too liberal, because I don't understand if they know what that word means. I mean, he was the governor of Florida. He's fairly conservative. I don't know. I don't understand how it works. And his whole thing that he's been talking about is he's like his own man. And he tapped all of the exact same contents that his brother already made for his bid for president. And it's just...
It hurts you.
It hurts me. It hurts me because, like, it's just a fucking popularity contest. It's just, we know who this person is. I hear a fucking cat. Cat nomin. Eating kitty cats. But the only person that we're considering that this person is going to be commander-in-chief in our country, which we all live in and pay taxes into and is important, is because we know who he is. That's it. Mm-hmm. And he looks like George Bush got stung by a bunch of bees. and that's the reason. That's why he would make a good president.
Oh, that's a new one. It is disheartening. I think people would like to see, like you said, somebody who hasn't been in the system and hasn't been through the system a billion times.
I think that's why America fell in love with Obama, because like he was this new guy. He was young and nobody knew who he was, and he had all these fucking big ideas, and he ran for president, and it kind of sort of worked out for some people. And it worked out for gay people and people who smoke weed, kind of. I mean, gradually.
Yeah, I think that we do need more of those people. I think part of the problem is the people who most of the people who would get in there and haven't been a part of the system and would shake things up a little bit are people who want to get as far away from politics as they can, and that is unfortunate.
Absolutely. I think that usually typically is the case. I was telling you about this because you're like, you don't ever want to have kids, and I'm like, you'd be the perfect person to have kids because you're a smart person and you would take it seriously. You wouldn't just like...
You overestimate me.
Well, I mean, like, you wouldn't just like knock a girl up at a party or something. And
that
then
is
be like,
true.
I guess we'll get married and have this kid. I mean, like, it would be, you're like an intelligent person and you would raise the kid. And I know your dad's like very loving and shit. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I feel like you would be a good parent in theory. And the fact that you are very, thoughtful about all this stuff, you've come up with the conclusion that you'd rather not raise a kid because there's too many fucking kids and you don't want to do it.
Close enough to my
more
reasoning.
Or less.
I'll take that.
Yeah, more or less. But I feel like that's the thing. Like, I've read some study that like a lot of scientists tend to not have kids, and those are the people that we need to fucking have kids.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like in the political thing. Like, people who have a lot of ethics stay away from politics because politics kind of requires you to have no fucking ethics.
Yep. The movie Idiocracy is happening.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, part of the joke of that movie is people always talk about how it's happening, but I feel like maybe it actually is happening. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, seriously, we could do a whole podcast on
We could probably
that,
do a whole podcast on, yeah, probably could.
We'll leave that for another time. Go watch Idiocracy. If you haven't watched that movie, just go watch it. We'll talk about it at
this
some
is
point.
the
probably.
We recommend anything but this podcast. Okay, yeah. So that was our whole thing about politics and how we're all depressed. The only politicians I've been looking at that I actually enjoy listening to, Barney Frank, Bernie Sanders.
I don't recognize these.
I would love it if I got that guy's name mixed up with somebody else. And the guy who was on Saturday Night Live.
You have to be more specific.
Al Franken.
Okay.
Al Franken. All seem to be people that actually have ethics, and people would like those people to run for president. I don't know if they're going to or not. It seems to be that like whenever you want somebody like I think people are really wanting Elizabeth Warren to run. I feel like those people tend to not run.
Yeah.
Like when the people clearly choose someone, like the actual people want someone to run, they don't run. So I don't know. It doesn't work how it's supposed to. We're both sad that part of the podcast is over. Okay, so we've been talking about a lot of heavy subjects because I don't know, we're depressing fucks, I guess.
Yeah.
So we could talk about something where we know some stuff about, but it's more firsthand knowledge than we know scientifically. But I like to talk about how electronics are getting better and cheaper and more amazing and also suck.
Oh God.
Yeah. So I feel like, and I would love to pull Steve in on this, even though he refuses to do this podcast. It remains to be seen if I'll edit him in later.
That's dumb. Why does he refuse?
He's a fucking weirdo. I don't
God
know. He's a fucking weirdo. I don't even like him. But basically, every device. I mean, every device has everything now. I mean, it's so weird to live in this world where we have like 10 different devices that do all the same things, and they all do like 100 things. Like we have laptops and netbooks and, tablet phones and tablets and regular laptops and desktop computers and TVs with Netflix installed. It's we have everything does everything, and I feel like it doesn't make everything better. It feels like they try to stretch these things too far, and they add too many features, and they shoot for a low price point. And even though it is amazing that I can buy a phone for $300, it's more powerful than the last 3 computers that I've owned combined. I can't, when I listen to the fucking music player, it cuts out whenever it's searching for signal, and it freezes, and I have to restart it all the time, and the battery is really shitty. And it's like, I don't know, I guess I'm posing, it's like, is it worth it to have this technology that is cheap and is affordable and is available and is amazing, but also is kind of shitty? So
I think a lot of that too comes from the fact that manufacturers, seemingly more so lately, have really been pushing products out there. Maybe before they were really ready. There seems to be a lot of that. I know I'm in software professionally, and I know that's a big deal in software, and it does seem to kind of be bleeding out into other areas of technology.
You know that I'm a big video game guy. So,
I do know that.
That is 100% plagued every video game. Every video game comes out way too early.
Yeah.
They all come out too early, and especially EA games.
That definitely does seem to be the case.
I don't know if they were the first ones to do that, but because they're such a big publisher and their titles are so big, it seems like that was the first publisher I noticed whenever I would buy their games. Whenever they just came out, if I would pre-order an EA game, it wouldn't fucking work. It never worked. It never worked. And there was always some major game-breaking bug, like they just didn't test it enough. And games are in development for a long time. And I understand that the best way to beta test something is to just release it and just have people fucking report all the mistakes. But, we're still paying for the game, and we're still paying for this technology that has all these flaws in it. And I don't know if it's super ethical to sell somebody something that's not quite finished. Right. That's basically my point.
From as someone who does work with software for a living, it strikes me as very strange, because I do feel like software has this problem as well, where we have programs. I'll just use one really probably oversimplified example, but we have music players and stuff that have all these social networking features and stuff like that.
Spotify, Facebook Connect.
Exactly. And if what happened?
I hit the thing. I keep hitting stuff because I gesticulate. I can't help it.
So like social media functions in music players. How does that help me play my music better? In a music player, I look for top-notch sound quality, simplicity in the interface. It's a music player. That's what it's supposed to do. Focus on that. If I want to tweet that I'm listening to a song, I will do that.
Yeah.
So I've never understood that, and part of it kind of seems a little strange to me. And this is probably just a stupid observation on my part that has no real relevance, but.
That's what this podcast is all about.
One of the main tenets of software design, if you're listening to this and you have any experience with software design, if you're in functional programming, your main unit is a function. If you're in OO programming, you have classes. One of the main tenets is these units of code need to focus on one thing. They're supposed to do one thing and do it well.
Right.
And it, I guess in my head, I see that as kind of extrapolating into software, into programs that are very, very specific and do their task very, very well. And I don't know. That's just kind of a line I draw in my head.
Yeah. And
I understand that there's, you have to understand that people, for some stupid reason, want to be able to tweet that they're listening to a song through their music player. So I understand that people have to take that into account. But I don't know. It seems strange to me.
Yeah, I think it's just, I don't know. I think that it goes against the basic tenets of how people usually have created everything. I feel like, as a graphic designer, especially with my one of my professors, Shinran, her thing is simplify. She just says simplify over and over. She just simplify, simplify. Her whole thing is don't make sure that what you're doing is focused, and make sure it does its job first. It has to be able to clearly communicate whatever you're trying to communicate first. Secondly, it should be interesting to look at. And, it has to draw the audience in, but it has to make a clear communication of whatever you're trying to communicate. In graphic design, if you're designing advertising, you cannot have all this shit all over the place. Like a lot of ads nowadays are even falling into the same thing, where it's just like there's a bunch of bullshit on everything. And it's too distracting from the actual point. Whenever you need to make like a piece of artwork or a piece of software or, a phone, you need to take what the thing needs to do and make sure that it does that as well as possible before you add other things to it.
Right.
And in a case of like the EA games thing, I can't remember which game it was, but we both pre-ordered some game, and multiplayer just didn't work. It didn't work. Like,
was that was it Aliens versus Predator?
It might have been.
One?
I don't think that was an EA game.
I don't remember.
This might not have been. This particular example might have not have been an EA game, but I remember there was a game that we bought same day, and the multiplayer just didn't work at all. It didn't work at all, and it was one of the main selling points of the game was the multiplayer is really great, and everybody logs on the multiplayer and it doesn't fucking work. So we've just been sold a product that does not work. So we've just been lied to. I think that's not ethical, and I feel like the game needs to fucking work. The game needs to work first. You can't anything else that they added to that game, the special graphics and making sure that I think even maybe secondary to making the game work is the story. I mean, like the stories. I mean, I'm definitely a proponent of games with good stories. 100%. I love good stories, especially in video games. But the game needs to function as a game first. Otherwise, it's not a game. If it doesn't work, it doesn't. That very basic tenet. If it does not function as a game, it is not a game. So what are you selling me? Yeah. So I wanted to use that as a bridge to kind of talk about how smaller companies, especially, there's kind of like a boutique technology thing happening now. And I think it started with the analog movement, where technology got so amazing that people started going backwards. And now bands like cool bands sell cassettes of their work. They sell cassettes and actual LPs, actual albums. And I think it's weird, but I guess I get it. I don't know. I mean, we knew a lot of people who played a lot of music, and I knew a lot of the guys that I sometimes plug it directly into your computer and play through that and listen to your headphones. And there were guys who wanted to build their own tube amps, and it's two really different ways of looking at it. But I feel like nowadays, people like to go back and have, like, if your thing's music. So, I mean, you definitely know more about this than I do because you use a lot of this stuff. But for my example, I love to play video games. I love old video games. I'm not comfortable playing on an emulator. I think it's just different enough that I'd notice it.
Yeah.
And I like to have the original controller, and I like to actually have the physical games, and I have a collection where a lot of them have the original booklets, and I like to just fucking hold the plastic, and I like blowing into my goddamn Nintendo even though you're not supposed to.
You rebel.
Yeah. I like that stuff. I like that nature of it. I like to crack my old Sega Genesis open and do the fucking capacitor swaps myself and modify it and make the clock speed run a little bit faster or slower. I like that. And you can do all that in an emulator. I just hit the fucking microphone again. You can do all that on an emulator with a couple of toggle switches in the UI, but it's just more satisfying to me to have the actual physical thing there and play it like it was originally intended.
It's part of the experience.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like with you, just, I don't know, fucking explain what you do with music.
I don't know. I'm really into headphones.
Yeah.
I have some, nice DAC, nice amp, and a couple decent pairs of headphones I need to upgrade here pretty soon. But I don't know. It's always been one of those things where once I got into it, I couldn't go back to, cheap earbuds or anything like that. It made too much of a difference for me. And I hear so many people say, "Oh, it's not that big of a difference. It's not worth all the money." Yes, it is. if you really love just sitting and chilling out and listening to music, yes, it is absolutely worth the money. So yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that kind of brought up a good point. And I feel like, listening to, like, because you've set me down and plugged me into your very convoluted audio setup to listen to albums that I've heard before, in my car on a CD player through my shitty fucking earbuds. And I can hear such an amazing difference, especially like in albums I really love. I can listen to it and I can hear little tiny instrumentations I've never heard before. And in one case, I could actually hear, and it was an acoustic track, I could actually hear the sound of his fingerprints on the guitar strings. You can actually hear the sound, and I thought that was amazing. And I didn't even realize that like CDs and digital captures, like the stuff they actually sell to the public, I didn't even realize that you could actually hear that stuff. I didn't realize it actually captured it.
And I mean, really the biggest difference when you really get into high-end audio, I would say that is the biggest difference, is the amount of detail retrieval. You can really hear the nuances in things you just couldn't hear before, and it's more apparent in music that you're more familiar with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's somewhere else I wanted to go with that, and I lost it. Crap.
Well, I'll talk while you think about that.
Okay.
Right. I was going to say that I think people, like when I was talking about like listening to music on my phone, I get used to listening to music on my phone in my shitty earbuds, and I feel like if that's all you have, and you are kind of missing out a little bit. And I feel like, the kids that grow up with these tablet phone games, and they're all, they buy a game and it crashes a lot, or there's lots of in-app purchases and stuff, and they're growing up with these games they're not just video games. They're advertising in the game, and it's a lot of grinding and boring bullshit. And I mean, games always had grinding and boring bullshit. Yeah. But it doesn't further the game. It's more about, this kind of freemium thing is trying to get you to pay for the game multiple times. Yeah. The games are often poor quality. They have way lower graphical quality than they could have, and they tend to have no story. And I feel like, going backwards to a certain point. I mean, I don't go all the way back to like the Atari 2600 and expect to have a good story. You're a fucking block shooting another block. But the point is, like, the thing with me in the video games is the older video games are designed to be good video games, and they're fun, and they were play tested all the hell. And because they were simpler, even though at the time they were cutting edge, but because they were in effect simpler than games now, where they only have a small amount of functions. The game only has, the character can only do so many things. Now the character can do literally anything, and you can literally go anywhere. I feel like people are tempted to have them do that, or they're tempted to have the game be ultra simplified, but not in a way like Super Mario World is ultra simplified. Right. It's ultra simplified, to the point where it's boring and not interesting.
It's just mindless.
It's mindless. Yeah. Exactly. It's mindless. And I feel like if that's all then you miss out on other stuff. And I feel like it's just not better. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And this isn't like every video game. It isn't just a comment on like all modern games, because like I've played. It was this kind of a thing for gamers to complain about too, but I played Metal Gear Solid 5, The Ground Zeroes, which is kind of a sort of a prequel. It's really just one map area that has different missions on it. But the actual main story in that is really good, and the game has a lot of complicated controls, but your aim is fairly simple. You are a guy who can shoot other guys, but you're supposed to sneak. The game makes it easier for the action and stuff this time around. But the main goal of the game is to not be seen. That's, it's simple enough. You're the character in this world and you can do anything. Don't let anybody see you. If you have to shoot somebody, hide their body. It's a simpler idea that they have fleshed out using all this modern technology. They've kept the core principle the same. They have a very solid core principle that works really well. And they've added all this other stuff to it on top of that. They've got that first thing they needed to get right first. And then they add everything on top of it. I feel like, a lot of, even, it's easier to create a game now, so anybody can make one. I feel like a lot of people make that mistake where they just smash all this shit together. And I feel like it really goes totally across the board into, electronics and software and movies and anything entertainment, anything you can touch with your thumbs. I feel like nowadays it's like too mass market, too oversaturation, not enough thought, not enough care.
Yep, I would agree. I still haven't remembered what I was going to say. It wasn't important. I don't know. It was something music related. I don't know.
Okay. I don't know. Have you listened to the new 36 Crazyfish record yet?
I listened to about 2.5 or 3 songs today when I wasn't in conference calls.
So I had been hoping that you would listen to the new 36 Crazyfish album, Time and Trauma, before we got this done, because I really wanted to talk to you about it because I love it so much. But this is this year marks our 10th anniversary as fans of that band, and it's been 5 years since their last album came out, which is weird to think about.
That is really weird to think about.
Half of the time that we've been fans, and it's been a long time, they've not released any music. But I feel like if you dip backwards into our previous conversation, and we were talking about this the other day, but like they really just want to fucking tell their story and they want to make good music, and that's it.
Yeah.
There was some article I read, or maybe it was something somebody had remarked once. He said something like, "I would never listen to a band that sells shit with their name on it that's like women's underwear." Those kind of bands where it's very much about marketing, and they very much have an image, and 36 Crazyfish image is we make fucking music, and that's what they do, and that's all they fucking do, and that's what they want to do, and that to me is what a musician is. Like you don't do the fucking Super Bowl and dress in silly outfits and I used to like shock rock and that kind of stuff, and that kind of more performance side of it. And I hate to completely disregard that as art or say that that's all bad music, but I feel like it's just another one of those things. It could be like a distraction, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like the performance aspect of it is sometimes more than the actual music creation. And I definitely with popular music, it's more about the performance and the actual art and the actual creation of the music, and a hell of a lot less about performing the music somehow. Like it's all performance based, but it's like a lot of them sing to a track, and it's not. It might be interesting to look at, but I don't know. I just don't get it. Yeah, I feel like an old person, but I'm trying to like make the plea for people to go into mosh pits and scream at people and shit.
Yeah, I think it's generally fairly easy to tell, the bands that really are doing it for the music.
Yeah.
And they're not concerned with popularity and it's not about the money or the marketing. I think it's fairly easy to tell from the quality of the material they put out. I think there is a noticeable difference. I think the songwriting has more weight to it. Mm-hmm. It's more interesting.
It's more personal, musically.
Yes, yeah, definitely. One other thing I was going to say when you were talking about all the mass marketing stuff is I wonder, and you always hear this debate, you hear it coming from the bands themselves sometimes, how much the record labels push bands into a certain direction.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's something that I have no experience with personally, but it's something that I've heard enough about that I have to wonder if that is part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would assume it is, and I feel like this particular band we're talking about left Roadrunner Records. I mean, for a lot of reasons, but partially because they didn't want to release their fucking album in America, which was insane to us.
That is insane.
Yeah, I know. Because we can remember that moment in time. Like we were huge 36 Crazyfish fans. Their first 2 albums were out, and Rest Inside the Flames was coming out, which is, I think. I feel like overall it probably is their best album. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I think it's probably their best album.
I would agree with that 100%.
It's really fantastic and really well put together. We have been waiting for this album to come out like rabidly.
Good word choice.
Yeah. And it was just like it was weird because we started seeing copies of it coming out, but they were all imports. Like there was no.
I do remember that.
Roadrunner had a release date for this album, and at no point did they mention it was not being released in North America. And that was part of the original deal. And I don't know exactly what happened. I guess they decided the band just wasn't doing that well in North America because they did really well in the UK. So the album was being released there. But it was really weird, especially since the band is from America and they do quite a bit of touring in America. But for whatever reason, they were hotter in the UK at the time. Roadrunner just made a decision to not invest in pressing copies in America. So I believe at that point we had already gotten our tickets for the Rest Inside the Flames tour, which had, they had been touring some of the songs, but they had officially marked that new tour, not that, at the time, not that long ago. We were within the first 3 months of it. I remember we went to the concert and Brock actually got up and he asked the audience if anybody had pirated the album or not. And he was like, I don't care because it hasn't come out here in this market. I just want to know if people have heard the songs. So we all kind of raised our hands and we're like, yeah, we pirated it. And he's like, yeah, they're not going to release it in America. We're going to see if we can get a smaller label to basically, make American pressings. Mm-hmm. And he didn't go into too much detail, but he just said that they decided not to release it in America or something. Yeah, it was a peculiar case because they're kind of a weird band, and not that monetarily successful, but there's like a lot of people know who they are. Their tours are successful. So I think in that case, they're kind of the opposite side of the spectrum as far as like the pop music thing goes, because they're about making the music and they're about touring the music and playing the music live, and they're not about conforming to whatever. Like Roadrunner really wanted them to be more marketed to the UK, and after that whole debacle of them not releasing the album in America, they got off that label. They went to another one, and I believe they released that album in America on Broship, which I think was their own thing they came up with, I think. and the next one after that might have been, was that Ferret Records or was that Collisions and Castaways? Wasn't there another one that was like Fisticuffs Records or something like that?
I don't remember. I remember Ferret Record, but I don't remember which one.
Well, Ferret does a lot of hardcore and stuff, but I think smaller labels. This most recent one is Spine Farm Records, but it's kind of a unique example as that band got more successful, they got a less well-known record label. Like they started out on Roadrunner Records, which had everybody at the time. Killswitch Engage, they had had them. They had there were a bunch of rock bands. Like I think Slipknot was on there. Like they had like all the most famous rock and metal bands, and it was like the biggest label for that. And they went from that label to a lesser known labels, and then had more successful albums critically. So I mean, when people still talk about, and if they know the songs, they usually know Slit Wrist Theory. They usually know Slit Wrist Theory, which was their first hit in like 2002 or 2002, I think. Right?
Sounds right.
Yeah. Which Angry Drunk Lesbians scream at their concerts.
Yes,
as we've experienced. They play it last. They always play it last. Chill the fuck out. But I think they're a great example of a band that they were like, they didn't go to. I don't think any of them went to college. Maybe one or two of them did, but I know Brock was the lead singer, a commercial fisherman. A lot of them had blue-collar jobs, and at very young age, like in their teens, decided to start a band and be in music. And that band, I believe, either turned 20 this year or turned 20 next year. And the thing is, like, their lineup, like, almost never changed. Like
that is true, and that's something you don't really see anymore.
Yeah, you get a sense that they really are they're really committed to being a band.
Yeah,
they're not about having people sub in and trying to. It's not about marketing the band. It's about having this group of friends play this music that they all want to play. And, the first time that they had somebody leave the band, it was because he was killed in a car accident. I mean, people don't leave that band. I mean, they replaced him with Mick Whitney, and Mick left in 2009, came back 2012. And then T. Noonan played in the band the entire time. And then when Mick came back, he quit to do art. But at that point, he had been in the band for 18 years. So, I mean, that's a hell of a commitment.
That's a good run.
That's a pretty goddamn good run. So, I mean, I feel like, you can usually, like you said, you can usually tell, what their aim is as a band. You can usually tell whenever somebody really just wants to make good music. And this band in particular, we know and we've experienced that they tend to meet all their fans, and they're just like regular guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And the first time we saw them, there was 30 people in like a tiny little place. Oscar's Bar and Grill
Yes.
in Louisville. You know, it's always been, not always been, but you know, 2 times that we've seen them have been like tiny little bar and grill areas. The one time we saw them at Headliners. But you know, they play major festivals, but they are not afraid to play the tiny little clubs. I love bands like that.
That's cool.
You know, they're playing giant festivals with Slipknot, and then they're playing in a bar for 20 people because they just want to fucking play the music.
Yep.
I respect that. That's part of the reason, even if I didn't like the music as much as I do, which I fucking love the music, but even if I didn't, I really fucking respect that. And I think that that's, especially like, we can kind of go a little bit further with this with pop music and everything, like with that whole, and I hate talking about this, but because there are a lot of people who really love Kanye West, and I get it, and I also don't get it. Like I listened to his most recent album, and there are a couple of songs they were all right.
Listenable.
Yeah, it's a listenable album, and people are saying it's genius, and I don't know why people think it's genius, but it's a pretty listenable album. I actually like his sillier earlier stuff, like fucking with the Jamie Foxx song, the Slow Jams or whatever. Do you remember that? Yes, was that?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, with fucking Twista. What the fuck happened to Twista?
I completely forgot about that song. Like, I forgot that was a thing.
That was great. But yeah, I like that whatever album that was, I actually really like that. But
that was Kanye West?
That was Kanye West.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that was Kanye West.
Mind blown.
But like with this whole thing that happened at the fucking Grammys, where he's like, you know, Beck needs to respect artistry and give his fucking Grammy to Beyonce, and there was that whole thing that was circulating on the internet that there's like 20 writers on Beyonce's album, and Beck wrote all of his own songs. Yeah. And that's just, you know, even if you don't like Beck, you got to fucking respect a guy that's just like, I'm going to make this. This is mine. This is my vision. I'm playing the instruments. I'm writing the music. It's all mine. You know, that guy is an artist. That guy is a creator. That guy is autonomous. And if his music catches, which it sometimes does and sometimes doesn't. I mean, he's a pretty well-known artist, but not all of his albums are, you know, top 10 hits. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's kind of like Radiohead. Like, everybody knows who Radiohead is. Not a lot of people are huge fans of Radiohead, but, you know, they sometimes have albums that don't hit, and when they do have albums that do stick, it's a big deal. And they're very independent. And they make all their own stuff, and they release all their shit online. I love that stuff. But I was going to talk about somebody else here, too. Oh, shit. To pull it back into the hardcore scene, you know, we listened to Solace.
Yes.
That's a great side project by the lead singer of Misery Signals. And he did almost everything on that album himself. He played the guitar, he did the bass, he does the singing and the screaming, and he does a lot of the arrangement. He wrote all the lyrics. Especially on a metal album, that's very rare to find one person that does all that stuff. Yeah. It's really kind of incredible. But, you know, he did it because he loves music. He's not trying to make a bunch of money. And, I don't think it made that much money, but he's happy with it. And it's a fucking great album.
It is. It's great. A ton of respect for people who put in that kind of effort to do it all themselves. Regardless of if you really like the music they put out, I think you do have to respect the commitment and, you know, all the work that people put into that.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just something that I feel like people don't admire that enough nowadays. But I don't know. I feel like maybe if you talk to somebody intellectually, they would admire that, but they don't listen to a lot of artists that do that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like for a while, it was like the indie music scene was big, like 2010-ish. Everybody was talking about indie music, but none of that was indie music. Indie became a genre and not about like guys in a basement making an album. You know what I mean?
Right. It became a sound rather than
it became
what it is.
A sound rather than an ethic.
Right.
Yes. And I think like if you pull it back to 36 Crazy Fist, and this might be true for all of these people, I don't know, but it's it's kind of a blue collar ethic. You know, it's a ground level ethic of how to make stuff. You know, you don't wait for somebody else to try to do stuff. You know, like me and you decided to start a podcast, so I just brought shit over and we're doing it.
We're on my couch right now.
We're on your couch right now. You know, we wanted to make a thing, so we're doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing it how we want to do it, which is rambling for like an hour and a half. But yeah, I feel like, and you should respect us.
Damn right.
But that's the whole reason that I started this. You know, I wanted to poke you to try to do this because I really love stuff like this. The idea of just, I want to make something, let's go fucking make it. And that's, you know, the kind of musicians that I love. Even if I don't love the music as much, I tend to really like the people behind it. And I often do like the music better, to be honest. I just don't like that kind of, I feel like that overproduction sound, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Whatever you can, like too much harmony or too much auto tune or whatever it is that people do to their music nowadays that bothers me. Songs about like nothing that don't sound personal because they're supposed to connect to a large audience, and they're not written by the artist. The lyrics aren't written by the artist.
I would say that is the biggest thing that gets me is just songs about nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everything I listen to has a massive amount of depth to it, but it just seems like the huge majority of quote unquote radio music, popular music,
yes,
is on the shallower side. Call me judgmental.
But I think you can say that it really is, because you can, like nowadays people talk about formulaic music a lot now, and it is literally formulaic. It is people in a room coming up with, like you have to repeat the chorus this many times, and the songs should be, if you're Taylor Swift, the song is going to be about, I don't know, fucking boys and love and I don't know, whatever her songs are about.
Weird reason. I mean, I guess that's cool. If you want to sing about that, that's cool.
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, I do like that she writes her own music, but like, some of her songs are very clearly mass market, and I don't know. It's like a whole fucking can of worms, because people really love some of this stuff, and people who are really intelligent love really stupid music I hate. And you try to make an argument for it and they get pissed off. And, I fucking love some really stuff that I find kind of stupid. Like I really love Michael Jackson. I listen to Michael Jackson all the time. And some of his songs are kind of deep, and some of them are clearly not written by him, and they're not really about anything. And he was a weird guy, and he may or may not have been a child molester. We don't know. But, stuff like that. Like, and I like, Weird Al music is not deep. Weird Al music is really, it's like silly and weird, but Weird Al, he's really committed to making like a good product, and he's, he won the comedy album this year, and there's a clear difference between what he does and what other people do.
He stands behind the fact that his music is stupid and funny and weird, and that's his thing. He owns it.
I feel like that's just more honest. Like if you're gonna make a silly song that's about dumb bullshit, fucking just do that. Like don't try to pretend that like you're this serious artist when you're writing songs about like fucking nothing. Like if you want to write a song about nothing that's silly and dumb, own it. Like fucking own it. Right. Like I feel like T-Pain kind of owned it. Like I made fun of him at first. It's like fucking auto-tune, this fucking idiot. And he's like so self-aware about how his music sounds. And like Lil Jon too. Like Lil Jon fucking knows he just screams what. And I love it. It's funny and it's great. I like all of his songs. It's great. It's definitely, I think, self-awareness, and I think if you take yourself really seriously in your music, it's clearly not serious. I think that tends to be a lot of people who are on like the top 40 stuff nowadays.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you feel sated about talking about music?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Sandwich.
I always feel like when we talk about this, we sound like old men. Like we're in our mid-20s now, but I feel like we've always had these opinions even since we were younger. Usually, I mean. I like a pop song here and there. I think that's normal to like, some of this stuff, and that's fine. But when it's your only music and you're trying to really like seriously defend it and it's really fucking silly, I think our levels got fucked up.
I can't hear myself at all in my earbuds, but I thought it was just me. Oh, there we go. Hey.
Okay, so we just concluded talking about music, which may or may not be lost. I was also going to tie this into movies. We can talk about movies for a little bit too. But I wanted to talk about. I mean, this whole podcast is basically just about how people don't look at things with a scientific eye, I guess. It's kind of more about repetition and how it gets into people's brains, and how when people go to make something now, it's with a lot of haste and with a lot of fat. And I think that's in general what we've been talking about.
That is true. I never really considered that.
I try to tie all this stuff together with a kind of central theme, and that's kind of good. Thank you.
I don't know.
What are we doing?
We're doing the. I'm totally leaving this in. This is that was the end of episode 1, part 1, and the next episode is actually episode 1, part 2, where you and I just talk about movies. Basically, I talk about movies, and sometimes you get to say things.
I like it.
So basically, that's part two. I think we're gonna just go ahead and upload both of those at the same time and just direct people. And if they don't want to, I don't know. I guess they can choose if they want to listen to both or if they just want to listen to one or whatever.
Yeah, good call.
And I guess if they're hearing me, they've made one of those choices. Okay. I guess I don't know. I guess that's all we need.